We are again in chapter 6, Mishnah number 6 of Pirkei Avos, of the ethics of the fathers, the 48 ways to wisdom, and way number 42 is Shoel Umeshiv. Shoel means to ask. Meshiv means to answer. Asking and answering. That's a way to acquire wisdom. Some versions of this Mishnah have an additional clause. Shoel Ke'inyin, asking on topic. Umeshiv Kehalacha, and responding accurately. To give answers to questions, to ask questions. This is a form, this is a methodology to acquire Torah. Now, what exactly does this mean? So on the most basic level, it means to ask questions, to challenge. If you find an incompatibility between how you would have understood a subject and how the subject is presented, that's an opportunity because there's a mismatch, right? This is the way you would have thought. And the way you're encountering the subject is different. The way you're reading the text is different. Now that's an opportunity. There's the mismatch. It's off. Okay, so there's something to figure out why what you would have thought is not the way it is presented. So to ask questions, but also to ask questions on topic. There are a lot of topics in Torah, effectively an infinite amount of topics. And, we're fallible. We're not angels. We're not computers. We try to understand one subject at a time. And therefore, it's important to make sure that when you do ask questions, they are on topic. And if you're trying to study something and it's confusing as is, you got to do it very slowly, very carefully. You're trying to slowly edge your way into the deeper elements and realms. If someone throws a curveball and they ask a question that's off topic, it's from a different subject, and you just create this little mishmash where you're studying one subject, but the question comes in from left field, that creates confusion. And you'll end up that both subjects, the subject that you're studying and the question that came from a different subject, they both will become garbled. So make sure your questions, which are very powerful and very necessary, as we shall see, that they actually relate to the subject at hand and enhance the study, because if they are from a different subject, it's going to detract from the study. So not all questions are created equal. The Talmud advises us to never ask off-topic questions. If you're dealing with one book of Talmud, this is the book and this is the subject matter that you are supposed to render questions upon. Don't ask from different subjects from different books. And I would also say more generally, there's an art, there's a skill to know how to ask questions. To be able to distill a question to the point where the question itself will be helpful towards advancing your studies. How are you positioning the question? And how the question will help you slice to the heart of the matter. Questions to be very powerful, very helpful in helping you go deeper and deeper into a subject. If you have a subject, you want to break it open. How do you do that? You do it with questions. And if you ask all the questions, you now have the starting pieces for opening up the portals of insight on any given matter. I've tried this many times, and it's a very helpful exercise. Suppose you want to go deeper on any subject in Torah. You have a citation. It could be from the written Torah, from the Talmud, from the Mishnah, whatever it is. You read the citation, and you try to challenge yourself to find, let's find 5 questions. Let's just write down 5 questions on what we just read. It could be just a verse with Rashi. And you're training yourself to say, okay, let's try to attack it. And sometimes, the questions are, just simple. What does this mean? Why are we told this? How will you implement this? The counterfactuals, what would have happened had something else happened, or had this not been the way it is? You train yourself to ask questions, and those will be key elements to help you open up the whole subject and to give you access to the deeper perspectives. And they're supposed to be challenging, because by doing that, it helps sharpen and deepen your understanding of a given matter. We don't want to remain with just a very simple, superficial understanding. We want to go deeper, and those questions are very helpful. And even if we are deeper, and we're already dealing with the more subtle nuances of a subject, and we have a perspective, and we're building out an understanding, you challenge that. You, let's say, present it in a public fashion. People are challenging it. You could actually strengthen it. Say, oh, I didn't think of that point. So it must be it's a little bit different. And you upgrade and you iterate your understanding with the help of those questions. There's a very dramatic story in the Talmud. It's dramatic for a whole host of reasons. It's also problematic if you think about it. But part of the story is about the power and the utility of questions. This is found in the book of Bava Metzia on page 84a. And it tells the story of the greatest rabbi in Israel in the 3rd century. His name was Rabbi Yochanan. Not to be confused with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who lived in the 1st century, who was a Tana, was one of the authors of the Mishnah. This is Rabbi Yochanan, who lived in the 3rd century, who was an Amora, one of the authors of the Talmud. So he comes after the Mishnah is already codified and canonized. And it tells a story how he once had an encounter with a famous bandit. There was a bandit who was known for his legendary physical prowess and insatiable appetite for banditry, for theft, for highway robbery. Someone with incredible ability and power and strength, but it was being improperly channeled towards very criminal, very evil pursuits. So the great rabbi, we're told, he was very beautiful. Just incredibly, incredibly beautiful. And that gives descriptions of how beautiful he was. He had a radiant, resplendent countenance. And he was once in the Jordan River, and he was bathing in the river. And he has this chance encounter with this famous thief and bandit who was named Reish Lakish, Shimon, the son of Lakish. And the bandit sees this person, and he starts to pursue him to go rob him. And he stops him, and he says, let's have a conversation. And he tells him a very famous line, Chelach le'oraisa. You have such strength, such power, such prowess. You should utilize that for Torah. You're someone of just incredible, immense strength. Why are you using it for such a nefarious purpose? Use it for Torah. And the bandit responds to him, you think I'm misallocating my abilities. You're misallocating your abilities. He responds to him, Yafyach or Shufrach, Lenashim, your beauty should be for women. You tell me my power should be for Torah. Your beauty should be for women. So the rabbi tells him, listen, I am confident that if you were to dedicate your strengths, your abilities to Torah, you'd become one of the great sages of the era. I believe in that. And you commented about my beauty. I have a sister. She's way more beautiful. We'll make a deal. You commit yourself to Torah study with all your vigor, with all your strength, and I will persuade my sister to marry you. And they strike a deal. And this is one of the most consequential events of the era, as we shall see. So Reish Lakish, the bandit, accepts it. And the first interesting point, well, the whole story is just fascinating, but every part of it is fascinating for a different reason. It describes how he would be able to leap into the water, over the water, from inside the water, he could jump out. He was able to kind of tread and just leap out of the water, just a physical specimen. He's in the water now. He signs the pact with Rabbi Yochanan. He tries to jump out of the water. He can't do it anymore. His physical strength sapped. He kind of mentally dedicated his strength to Torah, and it was no longer utilizable. I don't know if that's even a word. He can no longer channel that towards physical pursuits as much as he did previously. So they get married, Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan's sister, and he starts teaching him Torah. They start with just scripture. He teaches him scripture, all of scripture. And they move on to Mishnah. Masters the Mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan's vision for this former bandit, it's been naturalized. He's really becoming a great person. And he indeed becomes the second greatest sage in the land. In fact, we have hundreds of citations in the Talmud from Reish Lakish. And he becomes a study partner and a Torah sparring mate with his brother-in-law. And they would study in the academy together. And there was once a debate, a very complicated halachic debate, as to when exactly weapons, either a sword or a knife or a dagger or a spear or a sickle, when do they become eligible for ritual impurity? Now, the backstory for that is that if something is under production, it's not being finished, it's not done, it's like you're trying to craft a product, but it's not finished, it cannot yet become impure because it's not finished. So once it does become finished, now it's huchshar, became now eligible to become impure because now it's a finished product. But at what stage in the production does it become eligible to become impure? So there was a debate. When is it completed? And Rabbi Yochanan had one opinion. He says, when you put it in the fire, when you want to kind of process steel, you're kind of banging it on the anvil, and then you're putting it in the fire, and then you're scouring it with water. He says, when you put it in the fire, that's when it's finished. And Reish Lakish, he argued. He said, no, not when you put it in the fire, but after you put it in the fire, you scour it in the water, that's when it becomes finished. So they had this disagreement, and it unfortunately devolved into an argument. And Rabbi Yochanan tells Reish Lakish, listen, you're a bandit. You know weapons. You know weapons. The bandit knows exactly all about the weapons. So that's an insult, because he's now a great sage. But he's kind of referencing his previous career as a bandit. So this kind of escalates into a little bit of an argument. And Reish Lakish responds to Rabbi Yochanan. He says, what did I gain? I was a bandit. And now you still call me a bandit. What have I gained? And Rabbi Yochanan responds, what have you gained? What do you mean? I helped you become closer to the Almighty. I helped you become a great Torah sage. So there's a little bit of a dispute here. And Rabbi Yochanan, he took offense to what Reish Lakish said. And if I can advise you to never do something, is never cause a great Torah sage to be saddened. Because that's very dangerous. Rabbi Yochanan became saddened as a result of this exchange, and immediately Reish Lakish became ill. Why? Because he contributed towards the great Rabbi Yochanan becoming offended. And there's an exchange where his sister comes over, sister, which is the wife of Rish Lakish, and tries to say, to try to mend things over. It doesn't work out. And indeed, Rish Lakish passes away. So the second greatest sage in the land, the brother-in-law of Rabbi Yochanan, the former bandit, has passed away. And now Rabbi Yochanan doesn't have a sparring mate that's almost on his level. That's an equal, an equivalent to him. So he's trying to study, and he just can't do it because he no longer has Rish Lakish. And he's weeping. And he so thoroughly misses his brother-in-law, his sparring mate. And all the sages are trying to help replace Rish Lakish, who's irreplaceable. So they say, you know what, we're going to find the next greatest sage. His name is Rabbi Elazar ben Padas. He's the next greatest sage. He's going to kind of fill in the shoes of Rish Lakish. So Rabbi Elazar ben Padas, he kind of joins the academy. He's now going to take the role of Rish Lakish. And Rabbi Yochanan gives a lecture. And now it used to be that Rish Lakish would argue with him. But now this other sage is going to argue with him. So he starts giving his lecture. And Rabbi Elazar ben Padas, the replacement, he says, you know what? You're saying something very interesting. I will give you citations that prove your point. Everything he says, I'll prove it from this, I'll prove it from that. He's able to kind of enhance the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan with more proofs. Rabbi Yochanan is very disappointed. He's like, you're the replacement for Rish Lakish. When I would teach, and Rish Lakish was here, he would have given me proofs. He would ask me 24 questions on everything I said. And I would have to give him 24 answers to all his 24 questions. And as a result of that, the Torah and the halacha will become more clear and more expanded. And now you want to bring me proofs? We don't have that ability to go deeper as a result of these questions and answers and this intense questioning that Rish Lakish would afford. And Rabbi Yochanan, he became so despondent and melancholical as a result of the loss of Rish Lakish. He was just moping, and he ripped his garments, and he was weeping, and he says, what's going to be? Where are you? Rish Lakish, where are you? And he actually went crazy as a result of that. And indeed, he passed away in sorrow and agony over the loss of his friend, his brother-in-law, his sparring mate, and the one who would challenge and question him with every statement that he made. Now again, this is a fascinating story. It's a sad story. It's a powerful story. It's a poignant story. But for our purposes, we see that there's a big difference between study that is upgraded with fierce, penetrating, probing questions versus a study that's, okay, I'll say something and it's nice, it's beautiful. Let me bring some proof. Let me enhance it with proofs. Proofs, of course, and citations that support the position, that will enhance the study. But if I were to say something and you ask 24 questions and I have to give 24 answers to respond, that's a completely different level of enhancing and supporting the studies. And that's what our sages are telling us here. Way number 42, you have to ask and you have to answer. That is a means to upgrade and to deepen your Torah study. Now, part of asking questions and fielding questions, it's also contingent upon a person being able to reconsider their position. And this is something which a lot of people are averse to doing. People have such, cognitive dissonance. They have such a perspective that is fixed. Someone asks a question, they just become defensive. And the idea of debate, of real legitimate debate, where you actually consider the other side, that is becoming increasingly rarer over time. If you're so married, so wedded to your ideas, you're not willing that a question's a challenge, and you view the questioner as an enemy, That's not a system. It's not an attitude that will be benefited from questions. It's only when you're actually willing to consider like a question's a problem that you take seriously and then you try to understand and you're willing to discard your position if there's an unanswerable question that challenges it. This is how you upgrade your studies, with these sorts of questions. And I think if we're going to take Torah seriously, how can it be that we're comfortable with a question on a matter of Torah? It's serious. This is the will of the Almighty. This is 1000% truth. We can't just say, what difference does it make if there's a question? It's not so important. It's like the pre-flight inspection. I was like, you're on the plane finally, and they're like, we have a problem with the cabin door, So everyone gets upset because that means you're going to spend a few hours on the tarmac, or you might miss your flight, you might miss your appointments. But no one's going to say, what difference does it make if there's a few bolts missing on the plane? We'll just risk it. Let's wing it. Because we understand that the consequences are very grave if there's something wrong. The consequences of something wrong being present with Torah, that's very serious. When there's a question, you can't simply ignore it. Similarly, when other people ask questions, you cannot ignore it. How can you tolerate having something which is unresolved in Torah? If someone does not question Torah, if someone just shirks their responsibility to challenge, if someone avoids the pain of a question, if someone tries to avoid answering a question, they are treating Torah and matters of Torah with insufficient reverence, and obviously they won't acquire it as deeply. Moreover, as we have seen, if someone wants to ever get to the deeper insights, the deeper levels of understanding, one of the best ways to do it is via the question and answer format. And someone who does not do that will be locked out of the deeper understandings, and it's not what we want. We want to go as deep as we can, and therefore we have way number 42, Shoel Umeshiv, asking and answering. This is another terrific way to acquire Torah. And as I say all the time, I hereby am soliciting your questions. Send them to me via email, rabbiwolbe@gmail.com.